Yet, everyone can agree pretty much when they read in John that if you love me, keep my commandments. And if you have not love, you know not Almighty Yah. But somehow that one thing is not enough for us. That the Master has to say, Father, please, let them be one as you and I are one. The Father is love, the Messiah is love. Now, are we love to one another? Huh? To turn away, to turn off the distractions that the world can offer, the doctrines and the teachings that they say that some of us might find tempting, to just focus on the word that is given to us by the Father through his leaders that he set before us? Or do we want to be one, a leader? Is that why we're going for those other things? So that, I can say no more than you. Why are you leading? I should be leading. Because sometimes that's what it takes for a lot of brothers and sisters. They want to lead. But as Pastor Alex said, hey, if the Father puts you, go ahead. That takes a lot of burden off of him. Mother just said you can't lead unless you follow first. That's true. But people just want to be served. They want people to praise them. But they forget that the measuring stick upon which they will be measured is greater, is more burdensome than those that are being led. Because they are an example. My father testified this morning, earlier before I started, right? How would his brothers and sisters in the Philippines see him if he got a surgery for a minor shoulder pain? I call minor because I don't know how much it actually hurt him. And praise the Father that he decided not to test the Father first. The Father did say, prove me. Let's come together and reason with one another. Now, if the Father is asking us to reason with him, how much more should we, brothers and sisters, reason with one another? Or are we too prideful to admit that one of us could be wrong? You know, when I was talking to my friend on Thursday, we got to a point where it was, saying, it's because people think they're right. And I said, that's okay. You can think you're right, because there's only one truth. Someone has to think they're right. But the thing is, it's not about being right. It's about having the truth. We should not care if we're right or wrong, as long as we have the truth. If one part of what we think is right is not the truth, and someone gives us the truth, then we should amend to that. We should be humble to change that. And that's what we're being taught. We think that's simple, right? But that's not being taught everywhere. Because the pastors that should be teaching this don't want to admit that they could be wrong. They're concerned with self-image. Forgetting that what? Second commandment? Graven images? Can we put self-image as part of that?
Yes, sir.
The one in the mirror? We don't have to make drawings and wood sculptures and all of that. Sometimes we just need to look in the mirror. And that's the image that we worship. But instead what? In 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 17. Instead, this is what's taking hold of some of the brothers and sisters that we need to be praying for. If there are brothers and sisters that we're not seeing as much of, maybe we ought to know what's going on. Are they being pulled away by every wind of doctrine because their measure of faith is slightly lower than ours? Or are they concerned with something else? What does it say? Instead, these things, right? These every wind of doctrines, these things that are being used to lead us astray, these are fountains without water, without life. Clouds driven by a storm, to which the blackest darkness is kept forever. Now, if we care about our brothers and our sisters, we should be watching out for that storm. So, for example, if my little sister is watching something on YouTube, right, that I know would just be nonsense for her, why would I let her watch that? When it could be used to lead her astray. Because the way that she perceived and the way that the Father gives her the word is different from mine. Right? There are some things that some of us will understand and others won't. So for those who know better, then they need to act like they know better. If I'm confused about something, and my Father sees that I'm confused, as his responsibility, his job, to show me why I'm confused. That's an example, right? Well, we have an Almighty Father who's doing that every moment of the day. If we say his Spirit is leading us. And if we don't think it is, then we better be praying. To be touched and be given his Spirit. Verse 18, for speaking arrogant nonsense, they entice. Through what? Through the lust of the flesh, through indecencies, the ones who have indeed escaped from those living in delusion. See, it says clear cut right there. You escape from the world, and yet these arrogant nonsense can still entice us. We are tempted by what we want. Whether it be the recognition of our peers, right, Miracle? To be looked at by our friends at school. Because that's all it takes to do what they do. To feel about a certain thing, that's all it takes. To have been getting out of that, to just go back in it. Like a dog unto its vomit and a swine unto its filth. That's all it takes. It's nonsense for us who are wary of it. But we have brothers and sisters who are not as aware of it. What did the Master say? Look out for one another. Especially in this time, where temptation is on a fingertip. Where the approval of so-called peers is right in front of us. Social media, very easy. You know, people say we're in the most peaceful time of human history. That may be true in terms of warfare that's killing millions of people. But what about the spiritual warfare? Right? Where every little thing can take a budding flower that is our brothers and sisters and step in, kill it. And who can we blame but ourselves? Because we're supposed to be looking out for one another.
Yeah, that's right.
So if we even have an inkling that there's something going on about a brother, about a sister, then we better obey that voice in our head. Go check on them. We shouldn't care if we're intruding. If we're doing it in love, out of love, then his will is done. We're supposed to have died and him living through us. So in that is love. What does it say next? It promises them freedom, though show themselves being slaves of corruption. For what? One is slave to whatever overcomes him. We think we're free, but if we're overcome by something, and that something is sin, then we are slave unto sin. And the wages of sin is death. Oh, we know it. We know it. So then, are we keeping with it? Or are we being deluded into the freedom that's being promised? Now, a very big example, praise Yahweh. What is, in this world today, in the churches, the nonsense that is promising freedom to people? That they found too restricting. So they say, you have freedom. What is it? The law has been done away with. It's right here. 2 Peter 2:19. They promised freedom, but they are slaves of corruption. Those mega churches who promise freedom because they say the law is done away with, what are they a slave to? Money, power, self-image. That's corrupt before the Father. But what? In 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 2. Here's why. Here's why people fall for what they fall to, no matter how far they have gotten away from that delusion. Because no matter how many times the Father has washed us, I hope not us, but no matter how many times the Father has washed a person, if there are these things, then until they really repent, until they really change, they are still slaves unto sin. And what are these things? 3:2. For men shall be lovers of self. The first one and the biggest one. There comes my laziness, right? I want to take it easy. I don't want to do anything. I just want to sit down, get on my phone, or play video games. Read this and read that. That's it. Be idle. That's from self. Being worshipped by self. Being served by self. See, some of us, we don't need other people to serve us. We're fine with ourselves serving us. So sometimes maybe that's why it's so hard to see that we are not right with the Father. Because we're not seeing us being arrogant to other people. To other people, we're nice people. We're good people. But maybe we're forgetting to see that we are self-serving ourselves. That loving ourselves more than anything else. What's next? Lovers of silver or money. Now, a lot of us probably can say we're not into that. We're not lovers of silver or money. But that's the second biggest thing that people fall for. Is money. That's what's driving the corruption in the church world.